Already? Already. First question.
I think so.
First question for discussion. What are some things that have changed about the world in our lifetime, and how have we adapted?
Whoa, what happened? Oh.
He put the question up.
I'm trying to share my screen. I hope y'all can see it. Hope it worked right.
What has changed in our lifetime?
There's a lot in yours.
Yeah, you got that right.
I'll go first because it's a daily thing that we're struggling with right now. I grew up on a farm and I had to work. I had to go outside, and we were outside for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I am really hating right now with the kids in the age that they are. All they want to do is play video games and be on electronics. And I absolutely hate electronics. Absolutely 110% hate electronics. So it's changed so much to the point where when I restrict their usage and make them go outside for so many hours a day, they're almost embarrassed to have to tell their friends that their mom makes them do that. And I can't adapt to it. So if there's any advice on how to adapt to that change in my lifetime, I'm open to suggestions because I'm really having a hard time with that right now.
Don't make them go outside and play. Don't adapt to it.
I'm not. I don't, but I feel like I shouldn't have to. I just wish there was not so much of that kind of change in our world, in my generation, and the kids of my, the generation that are my kids' age. I wish there wasn't. So it's just crammed down their throats, and Lane feels like he's getting left behind because he's not on this video game and this video game, and he doesn't know about this YouTube person, and he doesn't know these things, so he feels left out and like not cool anymore because his mom won't let him participate. So I don't know how to adapt to those types of changes.
See, now in my lifetime, since I'm quite a bit older, my mom felt that way about television. So do I have to say something before I say something or punch something?
No,
you're good.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
I didn't know. But now, like when I grew up, we didn't have television until I was like 7 or 8, something like that. And when the TV came in, of course, that's all me and my brother wanted to do was sit in front of the TV, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. We still ate breakfast, and she put us out the back door and said, "You're going to go play. You come in at lunch." And we literally stayed outside like Rachel all day long. And then we got to watch a TV show at, maybe 1 a night before we went to bed, Gilligan's Island or whatever. I mean, so my parents saw the television as the same thing as you're seeing the video games and all. So we're all just keep going down the rabbit hole, and it keeps getting deeper. I feel like the video games are Satan's tools.
Well, I feel like, and part of this question too, it says how many of these changes are positive and how many of these changes are negative. And I've really struggled over the last several years with finding any positivity about any electronic devices. I hate it. I fight against it. I fight against it at home. I fight against it at work. I fight against it in the world in general. And I feel like I'm just seen as just old and old fashioned, and my kids don't like it, and Kyle probably don't like it.
You got the old right.
I just don't like it. I can't. I don't. There's nothing positive about any of it for me.
But there is positive. What we're doing right now, we could not do if we didn't have technology, if we didn't have it. So we've got to figure out how to make it work for God. That's the biggie.
I think one thing, and this is changing gears completely, but talking about things that changed a lot in our lifetime. I think this isn't like a technology thing or a physical thing, but I think just morals in general have really declined, especially over the past few years. I can think back to when my dad retired from teaching, and this has been probably 10 years ago, I guess. And I remember then that I asked him, I said, why, he taught 49 years. And I was like, why, why have why now? And he said, just what I've seen in the past 10 years has forced him to retirement. And he said that the start of it was really a decline in the home life. And I think that's where a lot of the decline in morals come from. And that was 10 years ago. And then I'm thinking back to that point to now, I see it. I mean, I can see it. And even just like the last 5 years, and I go back to like when Lane was playing T-ball and I was coaching him, and some of the kids that you get there, and then to now, it's like it's almost just half the team just deals with certain issues inside the home. And I think just in general, just a decline in the home life. I think that's one of the things that leads to a decline in morals. But that's one of the sad things that I see just so often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. So.
Nobody can come up with a positive.
I'm going to come up with a positive. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now if we didn't have technology. If we didn't have technology, we wouldn't be able to go through what we would have went through. Would have been so much more worse because we didn't have the technology to transmit it to within the homes. So yes, I think there's some positives. It's all how you use it as far as that goes. I think that's the positive I see with technology of what we're doing now and where would we've been without it. And I understand, but I do agree with the other things too. There's so much time wasted basically on video games and things like that when and I'm going to throw especially my boys in on that. But now the one things they do like, hey, let's go fishing, and they're up and they're ready to go, or they're ready to go hunting. So they're ready to get out and do those things instead of saying, hey, no, I want to play my video game for a while. So they've always been in that standpoint. But I see, and I totally agree with what Rachel said there. There's so many in the world that are missing out because they just don't get outside to enjoy God's creation in that way.
I build off of that. I would also say off of that I think that I see on social media from my friends and also some of your children actually will post and say like, how can I pray for you this week? Like message me on, I'll pray for you. I've seen lots of people saying like, let's start a Zoom Bible study, let's stay connected and things like that. I think sometimes it's easier, like if it's going to be anonymous and you don't have to write it or go see them, or sometimes it's easier to ask for prayers and really just showcase the Christian love. And the social media is also an option that we have now that we didn't have to begin with.
I've seen both sides of it in different instances. And one in specific, I don't know if y'all saw it, and I can't remember how many years ago or what the specific context of the picture was, but it had something to do with the Queen or William or the Princess. Sarah would know, but everybody, there was probably 40 or 50 people standing along this fence and watching them go by, and every single one of them had their phones were out, and they were all in different awkward positions trying to catch a picture of it. And then on the very front of the fence, leaning over the fence, was this one
when
elderly
Prince
lady.
Harry got married.
What was it?
It was when Prince Harry got married to Meghan Markle.
I told you she would know. When Prince Harry got married, and they're all leaning over and trying to get a picture or video or a Snapchat or whatever it was of what was happening. And then there was this one elderly lady just sitting on the fence, just watching and actually just experiencing what was happening. I think that's probably the negative of I've seen, so many of us are so quick to make sure we have a picture, or make sure I post about this, or make sure this or that or the other, that maybe as a culture we don't experience stuff as quickly. And then for the positives, I'm a huge YouTube person. I like to do things, and I like to make sure that it's going to go right. And if there's something that we need to get done that there's not a how-to YouTube video, then you need like a professional or a Rick Miller or something, because they've got YouTube for a YouTube video for everything.
Yeah.
So that's one, just in my life, that's one big positive, that 10, 15 years ago wasn't taking place.
I know what Rachel needs to do. She needs to turn it into a homework assignment that he has to do. Make it not so glorified.
Oh, we've tried that.
Oh, you've tried that already?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We also have mandatory outside time for 4 hours every day. And
Oh,
I usually get home from work and he's literally sitting in the same place in the backyard doing absolutely nothing.
okay.
And it kills my soul. It kills my soul.
So he's not a hunter or what's in that backyard to entertain him?
Everything you could possibly think of, he does it outside.
Oh, I love kids.
All righty. Now let's segue into our next question. In his life, how do we see Jesus meeting people where they're at? What different types of people do you see him relating to?
Well, he met the woman at the well, right where she was,
I think pretty much anybody, like any insert quote sinner that Jesus talked to was him meeting them where they were at, because that was that's what his ministry is about. It's not where you're coming from, and it's not where you've been, and it's not the sins that you've had. It's where you go after, and the choices that you make, and the decisions, and the life that you live whenever you do turn to him.
And that's the only way he could, was actually physically meet him, because he didn't have electronics.
And kind of to jump on what Sarah said, like nobody was too sick for Jesus to go to. Like the worst of the diseases, he would go to them. Nobody was too poor. Nobody, it didn't matter what their social status was. Mm-hmm. When they were rejected by everybody else, not only was Jesus open to them, but he went to them. And another thing that I, talking about where they met, Jesus, he would go to the people, or if he wouldn't go to them individually, he made himself accessible. And it wasn't like, he just, he sat on this high throne of gold and just waited for, the long line of people that had their ailments to, get in line and approach the throne. No, it was, just people that showed humbleness and showed that they believed him and that he could help them. As long as they were willing, he was available. So I think that's one of the things that kind of stuck out to me. It's, he never, and he could have demanded that. Absolutely, if anybody could have, it could have been him, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter where he was at or where they were at.
He seems to always relate to the downtrodden.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he related to the Pharisees and all also, but not in a way that they liked. He would try to tell them the error of their ways, or he would point out the error of their ways. So
I think of like the criminal on the cross, like in the last moments when he was hanging there, like Jesus met him, and it really showed us that like it's never too late, you're never too far gone, and that he'll meet you where you're at and he'll save you. And I think that that's a really good example.
Yeah, it is very good.
Hey guys, there's a tornado warning just been issued for Macon County.
Yeah, I'm watching it on the news.
Got my radar up on my phone.
It looks like it's just going to barely brush us, though.
Not to make a lot of it, but this wouldn't be a terrible way to go, I don't guess. With the
That's what I always said when I was at church and stuff like this started happening. I'm like, well, what better place to be when it's your time than church?
Okay, another positive to electronics. We all know there's a tornado.
Yeah.
That's my one allowance for positivity. I still hate it.
Okay, so now what's everybody's thoughts on the difference in an Acts 2 world compared to an Acts 17 world, which is our third item?
Which was the sermon this morning.
It was the sermon this morning, if you listen to Cameron, which was one of his better ones, I believe.
Well, that's what I was just going to kind of lead with that, is because I have never, ever even had that thought. I've never even thought this is this and that is that, and we should compare it and contrast. And it still hasn't really fully like sunk in for me yet. So it's just.
Well, he hit the nail on the head. You can't. I remember when I was in school, it's a whole lot different. You know, and I'm only 50, but I can remember.
Only 50.
Well, I can remember, you know, we still did the pledge, and, you know, we still did a moment of silence. And, you know, now, you know, if I tried to get that passed, you know, some people run me out of town on a rail.
Yeah.
But I mean, he nailed it. You know, it's the same message, but you got to go about it different. Yeah. You just do.
I was listening to him this morning and I thought, wow, everything we need to know really is in there if you just look for it. Because I'm like you, Rachel. I've never looked at those two different, the same book, different places, and went, oh, he did this here and this here. It never occurred to me.
Yeah, and it's two separate sermons by two different people, and it's right there just a few chapters apart. And it's like, it was just eye-opening, mind-boggling. Like, oh my gosh, I've been doing it so wrong all these years. And I could have used this like a week ago, and like in my office and at work, we have, you know, our hospice chaplain is a Methodist, and then there's Baptist, and then there's a Nazarene, and you know, it's just, so there's all constant conversations about what this person and this person and just different things, you know. And so this right here, and knowing that the comparison of those two things is going to help me in my real life, just be able to put a different spin on when I'm trying to help others understand why we do what we do.
And when I read it, Ken Ham is the one that wrote the book. You know, I'm the same way that y'all were. Like, it clicked. It made sense. And kind of, it's partly on question 2 and partly on question 3, I guess. I think about the way that that the difference in the two worlds is probably that there needs to be a little bit more meeting people where they're at. At least I need to do a better job of meeting people where they're at, because I know that as y'all have said, whether it was Jesus having that conversation with Nicodemus, you know, somebody that was high and holy, or him having that conversation with the woman at the well, and one's in John 3 and one's in John 4. They're back to back. That it didn't matter if you were the highest and holiest, or if you were somebody that society cast out that was living in sin. That he took the time to, I guess, care for these people in the way that he approached them.
Joe and I were talking after the sermon this morning, and we were like, you know, when we were growing up, you had prayer, and you talked about God at school, and the teachers talked about God. I mean, kids now, they're deprived of that. And in your sermon, you pointed out that we want to start teaching them like they already have that basic knowledge. And so many adults don't even have that basic knowledge. And that was an eye opener to me, because you think they do and they don't. See, I don't know if I'm on or off.
You're on.
You're on.
Oh. Well, I don't know. How do I know when I'm on?
So now,
Your microphone's red if it's off, Mom.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I see y'all down there in the corner, but I never know when I'm talking. Okay. I'm learning.
talking about his sermon, when you turn to Acts 17, 16 through 34, Paul's sermon, or Acts 2, 14, 38, Peter's sermon, is there anything from either of these sermons that sticks out to you?
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed is, both sermons were two different approaches, right? I mean, like we saw two totally different approaches to delivering the message, but both ended with responses. In both sermons, you can look at the end of both of them. It said people believed and were baptized, and that just goes to show you that people need Jesus. And no matter at what point in their lives and what point of their maturity that they are spiritually, we all need the same thing. But as long as we do our part to try to make sure we get the point across in the most relevant way to them without changing the gospel. And that's the main thing is, we don't change the gospel to meet their needs, but we just, like Cameron said this morning, we change our approach sometimes. And but even though it's two different approaches, you still saw people that that converted.
See, when I think of this, it reminds me of how we do Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
I mean, we do it. I guess to some it's unconventional, but it exposes it to 400 people. 400 people don't come for a regular Sunday service.
Good point.
They just don't. And so now, does that mean they're always going to keep coming back? No, but it gives them a chance. It looks like the worst part of the storm's just past us.
Yeah, I think it's south of us, or south of where we're at.
Bentley says it's not. She hates storms.
Well, the trees ain't been over like they were, so. Well, Cameron, what's your take on the two sermons?
Come here.
I'm sorry, we were evaluating our rainstorm flower pot.
Come here.
What sticks out to you in these two sermons?
Oh yeah, just flipping back and forth through both of them, and thinking kind of about what Kyle said, that they both have a response. Is I think that they both, I hate to call it this, but I can't think of a better word for it. They both kind of have a choke point, where everything that they're saying, it kind of boils down to an all right, what are you going to do with it kind of moment. And in Acts 17, it seems that in verse 31, that Paul does that by focusing on Christ's second coming, where he says, because he's fixed a day on which he'll judge the world in righteousness. And then over in Acts 2, it seems that Peter kind of does that by saying in verse 36, he's talking about Jesus crucified. He says, therefore, let it be for certain that God has made him both Lord and Christ, this Jesus whom you crucified. So kind of a little bit of an accusation there, but I guess it kind of goes to what some of y'all mentioned before, that the message stays the same, is that the gospel's found in both of them, and that there's going to be hard parts in evangelism. I think the reason it stuck out to me is that's the hardest point for me when I'm discussing with somebody, is it's easy to talk about Jesus. It's easy to ask people questions about their life and their story and all that. But the part that I routinely struggle with is getting to that moment of like, all right, is there anything that we need to do now that we've been looking through all of this? But that's just what's been sticking out to me. There's a ton of good stuff in both of these passages. That's just one.
We went through all these, so we're going to come to our last question, which is basically tying all of these questions together. If our empathy grows, meaning we understand others better, how does that benefit us as we try to reframe the gospel, as you said this morning?
I think the biggest part of it is just that people are more willing to listen to us, and they're more willing to see our point of view if we are also willing to see their point of view. And like whenever he said this morning about you need to know about Buddhism if you're talking to a Buddhist, like people, I guess like whenever I grew up, I just kind of like never really thought about that I needed to research into other beliefs in turn to be able to share what I believe too. And so I guess like I just kind of always thought, well, I know what I know, and I know what I know really well, so that works. But it doesn't work for everybody, and they're not gonna necessarily respect what you have to say if you aren't willing to listen to what they believe and why they believe it. And so if we have empathy, that helps other people to be able to have empathy for us as well and kind of see our point of view.
I think one thing that's kind of always been in the back of my mind is, like for people that just say that they just don't go to church at all, people that just, just for whatever reason don't go. And then, they see us. And I think that maybe sometimes they're a little intimidated because, they know that we go to church all the time and we know that they don't. And they're afraid that we're going to approach them with this self-righteous, high and mighty attitude. But as long as we don't approach them that way, and as long as we, treat them with love and empathy, and just to tell, we want to make sure that we get our point across that they need Jesus just as much as we do. And as long as we just say, look, we're all, we all have the exact same goal, but we can't put our own righteousness into the equation at all. And I think that's one of the things that I think kind of maybe prevents people from approaching us. It's just kind of, it is a little intimidating, I would think. So it's just one of the things I think of.
Well, I'll say one thing that I've learned since I opened the gym that kind of ties to this in a long circle. A lot of times I'm guilty, not as much since I opened the gym, but, stereotyping people. I got some people at the gym that when they first come in, I was like grabbing my gun. But, now that I've got to know them, man, they're as sweet and as nice as they can be. And, they go out of their way to do anything, to take care of the gym. And I think a lot of times, I used to be, if you'd see somebody, like, well, I ain't even gonna fool with them, just being honest. And so I think that's one of the things that Jesus always did is he went to the downtrodden. Whereas I think a lot of times, and I'm not throwing any church on the bus, I'm just saying a lot of times if somebody comes in, they look like $1 million, everybody feels like, well, they can go and relate to them. If somebody comes in, does not look like $1 million, everybody may be hesitant to go to that person. And that's the person that most of the time probably really needs it. And I'm throwing myself on the bus to begin with because I'm easily guilty of looking at somebody and just right off the bat, making an assumption. And I'm just willing to admit it.
I thought I had backtracking just a little bit when you said we needed to know what other people believe. We need to research it and know. Sometimes I think some Christians are afraid to venture beyond what they know and don't want to to know what other people believe because of fear. Just and you know, if you sincerely and truly know what you believe and it's there, you shouldn't be afraid of going and reading about other people's the way they believe and that and understanding where they're coming from. So, but I do think that I've seen that in some situations. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Well, Cameron, you did a great job this morning.
You did.
Awesome.
Amen.
I appreciate you, Brian. I appreciate you you heading this up. I guess if nobody else has any other thoughts or anything like that,
My other thought, I do have another thought.
Perfect.
Is there, like when we do go back on a regular routine, I think it's great that we can come together and discuss the sermon that was preached to reinforce some of the ideals that was taught that morning. And I think it is great. I don't know if you wanted to do it like on a Wednesday night, reinforce and rehash the sermon and bring out the questions like this or what, but I think that would be absolutely wonderful to do.
I love this time too. I'm right there with you. And this always just goes so great for me when I do it with the teenagers. So we'll try it here too. Does anybody? And that was slight sarcasm. Does anybody want to volunteer? Any of y'all want to volunteer to lead the closing prayer?
I'll do it. I don't mind.
I appreciate it.
All right, y'all pray with me. Our God, we love you. We thank you for blessing us with another day. Lord, we're so grateful that we do have this avenue to see each other and also to worship and to study more about your word. God, please be with us as we approach all those in our community and just each and every person that we come in contact with. God, help us to be bold and help us to not be afraid to share your word with everyone. But God, just give us some foresight on how we're supposed to approach everybody so that we can deliver the message more effectively. God, we thank you for again this night that we've got to come together. Lord, we ask you to please be with all of us. God, keep us all in your care. It's in your son's name that we pray. Amen.